My name is Friar Luciano. I come from Brazil. At this moment, I'm living here in Europe, in Portugal. And the idea of this reflection is to collaborate in this search that each one of us eventually has and experiences of having balance in a moment of the world that is so troubled, paradoxical. Generally, we are aware of ourselves when we are awake, when our consciousness is very much within the physical brain thinking, and this is what we call conscious self. However, we have a mental, emotional world with which we have a considerable intimacy, and however, when we fall asleep, generally with full awareness or consciousness of our relationship with these levels. We are a personality that is integrated by bodies. We have the physical bodies, an emotional body, and a mental body. When we enter the process of what we call sleep or dream, we sort of turn off our physical brain, and our consciousness that is not our mind. Our consciousness is one thing, our mind is something, our conscious something else. Our consciousness is something much broader than our mind or our emotions. So when we fall asleep, our consciousness continues to relate with life, with the surroundings. And eventually it registers more or less consciously what happens in this situation. And our evolutive moment as human beings would require us to have a little bit more of consciousness of what happens during the night. Why? Because if we count 6, 7, 8, in the best cases 9 hours of sleep, we spend years throughout our lives sleeping. And generally, we don't consider this moment to be part of life, of part of the learning experience, and we end up wasting this that is part of our lives already. So sleep, dream is not something artificial that we have to create to relate with. We sleep with different qualities of sleep, let us say, but it is part of our experience, as we will see it here today. So it will be a moment for us to consider this moment of night, so that eventually we may learn how to resolve situations and find some answers, because again, when we are less conditioned by the thinking movement of the physical brain, eventually our consciousness can bring light, information. This is to say, we can continue living during the night. Our approach today is not an approach that has the intention of being complete about the subject, which is very wide and with many variants. So we will not enter the psychological, psychiatric part. We will go close to this, but we will not deepen into this approach, because this is not the case. So see, generally, we have some difficulties in transforming ourselves, because we are very much conditioned by the collective thought form, by that which the society, the civilization, or the world brings us as a behavior pattern, objectives, experiences. We are generally very conditioned to the collective consciousness. And as we will see later on, the moment of sleep is also a moment when our consciousness eventually can sign to us, show us, or indicate to us that which we are supposed to change. And we could ask, but change for what, if it's so good in my understanding? Change because life is continuous change. We see nature, the expression of nature is a continuous transformation. And we, human beings, have a tendency of crystallizing ourselves in a way of being, feeling, thinking, and living, and at a certain point we lose the interest for the discovery of something that we still do not know, or coming to know better that which you already live. And with this, we also turn ourselves off also from the possibility of having a sleep or a dream that is more conscious. In this context, it's important for each one of us to reflect upon the situation, because eventually during the sleep and eventually through some dream, we could be aware of something that is necessary, useful, not only for our transformation, but also for our self-knowledge. Because when we are very much present within the physical brain, we are conditioned by our concrete mind, by our analytical mind, our way of thinking that ends up restricting very much our identity. So the point of identity and the life of awake within dream is within the same logic of reflection. Transformation for many of us sometimes leads us to a region of suffering. We speak of transformation, detachment, changes, and something in our subconscious activates a process of self-defense, as if transformation were something connected to suffering, or the re-encounter, let us say, with a traumatic experience, or something that we want to avoid. So in our day by day, we are in contact with countless stimuli, many situations, and especially with many codes. A code is something very abstract that enters our consciousness and oftentimes is not registered. However, it's imprinted into our subconscious. So when we fall asleep, our physical brain eventually rests, and that which is in the subconscious tends to emerge, right, in different ways during the moment of the sleep. And in this moment, some eventual traumas or experiences that we may have had on the same day or in a short term or even in a long term, it could emerge for some reason at some point, either to liberate an experience that was in the subconsciousness. I'm going to give an example. Let's say we are walking in Lisbon someday and we visualize or experience close to us a less harmonious situation, a verbal conflict, arguments, or an accident, or something like this. Even if this experience does not touch us directly, the code of this experience, the vibrational state of conflict, remains registered in our unconscious. And when we fall asleep, eventually this code is activated again. And it could activate a dream of violence or conflict, something that has a vibration that is close to that which we experienced during the day as a code. So if we have the intention of at least being attentive to this movement of the consciousness during the day and also during the night, even if we have, as we will see, some difficulties in falling asleep or very light sleep, wake up easily, or a tendency of having some types of dream, if we give some attention to this, our internal economy within our consciousness can help us to organize this dream movement and eventually bring some constructive experience through dreams. Well, as I was saying, we register many situations during the day, and eventually during the night, we live a continuity of that which we lived either that day or on previous days. So for this moment of the lecture, we could leave as a stimulus of observation how eventually in the dream or in the night we continue to live that which we experienced during the day. What could it mean? It could mean that we do not detach enough from that which happened during the day, and as we will see also soon here, we don't prepare ourselves for this moment of the night. We arrive tired, we take a shower, eat something, and lie down to go to sleep. And we just consider this moment as a physical rest, and not as a continuation of our consciousness, the movement of our consciousness. So being a continuation of our day, we don't wake up the following day feeling that we detached from the previous moment of our life, and that we could really have some movement or contact with the energy of restoration. Not so physically. Oftentimes we wake up more tired in the morning than when we went to bed. Have you ever felt this? You wake up in the morning and you feel more tired than when you went to bed. So you eventually see what it could mean. So how our consciousness is much broader than our minds and our emotions and actions, so much so that it registers even the unconscious, so it's much more wide, much wider than that which we register. So during the night it could happen that our emotional body that also has its own consciousness, and our mental body that also conditions a part of our consciousness may register something that for them or for our broader consciousness is important. What it could be inexpressive. See, for example, I'm going to give a very synthetic example of 2 examples of dreams of people who send me dreams, for us to see how through the symbolic life of dreams, not all dreams are symbolic, we can be helped to continue the movement of our consciousness and perceive or realize in the dream an instruction for something, a piece of instruction for something. For example, someone who could have a dream that they have a bunch of keys in their hands, and this bunch of keys fall, and they don't manage to get the key to open an unknown door. So the person has a bunch of keys in the hand, is before an unknown door. The keys do not stay in the hands of the person, and they have to cross the doorway. This is a symbol for us to transform ourselves and enter a new stage of our lives. So if we are in a moment of life of entering a new experience, something new, it could be that our consciousness and life may want to bring us an impulse and the stimulus that with this bunch of keys that we have in our hands. What is a bunch of keys? That movement, that mindset, that way, our known way of thinking and feeling. Because that bunch of keys is no longer useful for the door we want to open. Can we follow? So we have to enter a new experience, a different stage of life, but those keys that we have in our hands do not fit, because we need new keys, new approaches for this new approach of a new stage of our lives. This type of experience is very evident for those of us who are seeking or consider the life of dream, the moment of the night, as a continuation of the consciousness, and a possibility for us not to, an impulse for us not to insist in this way of being that will not help us to change the cycle. Then people also dream very much about different types of shoes. For example, a dream these days was that someone was dreaming that the shoes would worn and the outside part of the foot. So we have shoes and the outside part of the shoes, it was more worn. What could it mean? You see, when we walk, our walk in Chinese medicine, for example, is a way of diagnosing for our way of thinking, of being, the way we carry out situations, how our feet are when we stop. All of this is an ancient wisdom that is practically forgotten. When our shoes is very much worn out, it could mean that this periphery of our consciousness is experiencing, let us say, wear and tear of the way we work today. So our way of walking, of our personality, the way we walk in our day by day, symbolically, not the physical walk. We are eventually wearing out that which is the contact of our personality, which is the periphery side of the shoes, with life. So even if at first it could seem a little bit complex, the theme of dreams, as we give some attention to this process, we gradually contact a level that is within us, that we don't want to conquer or make a course for this or pay for it, which is our intuition. All of us have had an intuition at some moment of our life, something that came as a flash, an experience of an insight, and we realize something without thinking, without feeling, without analyzing. We simply knew something intuitively. Why? Because intuition is already part of our internal consciousness, which is beyond the thinking mind. And our intuition can be much more easily contacted during dreams than during the day-by-day moments when we are awake. Why? Because our physical brain conditions our experience very much, interprets and relates with that which happens, interprets, and therefore selects what it accepts or not. And so the intuition is very much restricted. However, when the physical brain is sleeping, resting, our more abstract consciousness has more possibilities of recording this intuitive movement. Now, the quality of the dreams, not of the sleep, the quality of dream is very much connected to the type of life we lead and our aspiration of life. If we have a purely material, concrete, human mission, a purely material mission, let us say, so the tendency for our dream life to accompany this conscious of awake that we have, unless internally in the more profound consciousness, we may have realized that we are looking for a greater sense for life, meaning for life. So if we look for a greater meaning for life, something broader or deeper for our existence, it could be that our consciousness seeks or uses the moment of sleep or some dream to instruct us, to heal us from many situations. For example, there are many dreams in which we can be healed of a situation. Let us suppose that we lost a beloved acquaintance, family member, and we were 7 years old, and we don't have much memory of the moment, but this was an impactful moment and imprinted into our consciousness a code. And during the sleep, this caused unquietness, a sensation of something incomplete. So the impression of a gap in our existence. So it could happen that during the dream, if we have or had a consistent connection with that individual who passed away or disincarnated, it could be that during the dream we re-meet the subtle bodies of this individual, and there we experience a moment of balance or harmonization. Someone, for example, could dream with their grandfather. This person was passed away when he was 70 years old, and we meet him in the dream much younger, because our subtle bodies have a much younger appearance than the physical body. So this process of healing of childhood, for example, could be balanced or even dissolved also during the sleep, the dream. So as we see, the dream life could really represent not only a continuation of the work that we are doing within our consciousness, but also these other sectors, such as healing or liberation. Well, as I was saying at the beginning of the lecture, we are part of a collective consciousness. Each one of us has a physical body, which is very individualized, but we are subjected to a collective environment. If it begins to rain, all our physical bodies will get wet. So within the physical law, we are subjected to the same stimulus. Our emotional body is also individual, but it also interacts with the collective astral. Our mental body is also individual, but it also interacts with the collective mental. And something important of this reflection is that eventually we can see ourselves both consciously as well as in the dream, living an experience that is not precisely ours. This is to say, we have any feeling of rage or jealousy or any other situation, and we didn't build this consciously. However, eventually our emotional body that has been continuously interacting with the collective emotional may have received this code during the day. This remains registered, and during the night this code is activated and we have a dream, and in this dream we are expressing a situation of indignation or jealousy, something that we had not registered consciously. And our mind, that is even more subtle, we could see ours than the emotional body, we could see ourselves thinking without even have had the intention. We can see ourselves thinking in a certain way about a subject that is not our general way of thinking about something. Something that does not come from a process of reflection, but rather of absorbing from the collective consciousness a way of thinking, and we begin to think as the collective thinks. It's very important for us to be attentive about this, because as I said at the beginning, deeply we are searching for a genuine and authentic expression of our experience. None of us wants to be here conditioned by a collective experience, no matter what it is or which identity it is. Each one of us is first of all trying to discover what they are, what we are, and finally what we are doing here, and wants to have a genuine, authentic experience. So if we are not attentive to this movement of our contact with the collective consciousness, we run the risk of living the experience of someone else, of the collective, that which is collective in some scope. With the media, this is very strong, that the media begins to almost form our consciousness towards a certain direction, and someday we have an opinion about a subject and we didn't even think about this. So as they say in Brazil, we embrace that subject and we see thinking that way of social subject or political consciousness. So we have to be very much aware of the conscious of our conscious with the collective consciousness. This contact. So as we can eventually, how can we detect that a dream is the continuation of our day-to-day, and when a dream can be an important moment for our life experience? Generally, an authentic dream, what is an authentic dream? When our consciousness is in contact with a level that is deeper than the emotional and the mental, and goes to that region that we call the deep sleep. That with just a touch, we stay a few minutes there a night, each night, when we manage to get to this moment, and this moment restores so much that it promotes a sort of reset of our consciousness. So when we manage to prepare ourselves to the dream, which we will see soon, and really a moment to disconnect of our concrete day by day, the preoccupations, anxieties, mental or emotional experiences, and we prepare ourselves well to sleep, generally our consciousness can touch a level within us in which we can have an authentic dream. And how can we discern if we have had an authentic dream or not? First of all, it is or not for each one of us authentic. But generally, when we touch the profound sleep and we have an authentic dream, we live a natural process of transformation. So let us say that I have a family, professional relationship of attachment with someone or a situation, and I consciously know that I have difficulty with this attachment or situation at this moment. It could be that during the night, if I have the aspiration of expanding this relationship and come out of the relationship of attachment, during sleep, and through some sleep, I can experience some impulse that, even not being translated into an image or a story during the dream, I wake up in the morning, and when I am before the situation again, I see myself transformed. Do you realize? So I continue with the same relationship, but that attachment, that difficulty that I used to have, that is denser, I feel that I have been transformed in this relationship. Because when I had an aspiration to resolve that situation, brought me disturbance for this attachment, then I feel better, more liberated from this conditioning, from this attachment, for example. So an authentic dream will always cause or promote some transformation within our consciousness. It will always help for our consciousness to see some situation of life in a broader way, in a more wise way, more tolerant, more understanding. How is this moment of falling asleep or going to bed or the waking up moment? Here we can give examples of three situations that do not favor very much a healthy dream and a conscious dream. They are two parallel things, but they are two important things. First of all, our contact with technology until the last moment before sleeping. Then food, the theme, and then the theme of the conflicts. So if we want to awaken to a dream life that is more balanced, we should first of all avoid conflicts in the moments previous to when we go into bed or sleeping. Eat more in a more healthy way, and with a greater interval between the time I'm going to sleep and when I eat, and also the moment when I use technology, television, telephone, internet, whatever. And then we go to the moment of the night. So these three situations can help us very much if we can take care of this a little bit better, to enter this movement of the night in a freer way, let us say, from some conditionings. Because if we eat too much and then we go to bed, our metabolism is going to be busy in the digestive process, so our brain will find it more difficult to disconnect the whole neurotransmitter transmission movement and allow our consciousness to detach and experience the astral, mental environments, and beyond this, the intuitive plane, and beyond this, that which we call premonition. All of this is within us, but if we don't give attention to this night moment or the sleep moment, we remain in a moment of our lives, practically 1/3 or 1/4 of our lives without making good use of. Because generally from 6 to 8 hours we are dedicating to this movement of sleeping. So it would be wise to use this moment to be as conscious as possible, or using it in the best way possible. So conflicts and discussions, arguments, everything that generates a movement, an emotional movement within us of conflict, does not allow the astral body to detach from this vibration of conflict, attachment, difficulties of relationship, and live a less conditioned experience. The theme of food, as we have seen, and the theme of technology. Well, some people who are dedicating attention to this moment of the night also use this moment to look for some answers. So, for example, if we have an existential or family matter, something more internal, not so concrete, not if I'm going to buy this or that car, something that is more consistent as a human experience, we could avail ourselves so that before falling asleep, we put this question to our consciousness, this issue of reflection. For example, those who have children or grandchildren or want to give some attention to the neighbor could ask, how could I deal with this situation as consciously I cannot deal with it yet in the best way possible? If we persist in this intention, it could be that from our intuitive, profound world could be a help before this situation and eventually an indication on how to deal with this. So before falling asleep, we could also find many solutions for matters that here eventually we don't have some answers to. Another type of experience is when we have to make some decision. Our consciousness has made this decision, but our personality still does not manage to assume that decision for some reason. So during the night, in this process of subtilization of the consciousness, we could be in contact with this level of the consciousness that already knows what the decision is, and then we manage to make the decision during the sleep. And when we wake up, even if we don't experience the moment of when we made a decision, our conscious knows that it made a decision. For example, we have a conflictive relationship with someone in some environment, and we want to make the decision of not nourishing this conflict. But in the conscious world, when we are with the physical brain active, the situation is emerging and we get involved with this once, time and again. But our consciousness knows that it should not have this movement. So we could make a decision during the sleep of not getting involved with this anymore. And when the situation emerges before us, we see ourselves keeping a certain distance from that. This is to say, our consciousness managed to make a decision even during the sleep. Do you understand? So dream life is not a situation of life that we should belittle or continue to belittle, because as we see here, we could make much better use of this moment of life, of the day, that is practically 1/3 of our life, that happens in a region of the unconscious or the subconscious. Well, let us mention here the theme of insomnia here for us to understand better our difficulty in sleeping or even going to this region of the deep sleep. Well, first of all, there's this whole matter of the collective that we have talked about already. And also there is the fact that all of us have aspects within our consciousness and our personality that are not so mature as we would like them to be or so harmonious as we think that they are. And life shows us that. However, consciously, we create a mechanism of self-defense, and we do not allow our profound consciousness to show us. Look, why are you nourishing rage? This is not something healthy, neither for you nor for others. So we defend ourselves in the justification that indignation is necessary, for example. So in the subconscious, we already know that this is not healthy for us or for others. So the personality creates a movement of self-defense, and it does not allow our consciousness to go to the astral and mental worlds. Why? Because it knows that during the dream that was built with this need of transformation could show us how indignant we are, or how we are walking around with other feelings that we don't want to consciously transform. So if we have an attachment to transform in some situation within our consciousness, eventually the insomnia could come as a resistance of the personality to see clearly something that is supposed to transform. So we want to defend ourselves of having this help or see ourselves before ourselves. So our physical brain does not allow the detachment of the consciousness. This is to say, our attachment could difficult our process of transformation, of becoming aware of that which we are supposed to transform, and from there we could find difficult to sleep. So the self-defense of transformation or constructive change in the character, way of thinking, way of feeling, it could be the origin of difficulty in sleeping or resting.
Para finalizar, antes de abrirmos para perguntas, temos o tema dos
To
pesadelos.
finalize, before we open to questions, we have the theme of the nightmares that many may have, right? Which are the moments when our consciousnesses register something on the mental plane or the astral plane and remains with the record of this code. See, what we call nightmare could have many origins and causes and could be nourished by many situations. One of them is the theme of food, the way we eat. If we eat heavy food close to the moment of sleeping, this metabolism process that tends to be slower during the night could generate on the plane of the metabolism a conflictive situation among enzymes and so many things that will reflect in the brain movement. Again, with the reference of the Eastern medicine, they know the relationship of the digestive process and the brain process. So if we are having the metabolism of the food at 2 a.m.,
a contraparte sutil desse movimento
and it could happen.
Também, como dizia, o
it
nosso
could
corpo
cause some
astral,
type of
ele está
nightmare there.
interagindo com
And
o
as I
movimento
was
astral
saying,
coletivo.
our astral body
Todos
is
nós sabemos
interacting
que
with the
plano astral,
collective astral
tanto assim que
movement.
existe a expressão,
And all of us know that the
pessoa
astral
tem baixo
plane,
astral, não, ou aquele ambiente tem um astral pesado.
so much so that they
Isso,
say, they
não
have the
pensamos
expression in
tecnicamente o que
Portuguese.
isso quer dizer.
Someone has
Mas
a
não
low
entramos
mood
em
as a
contato,
low
ou
astral in
atravessamos
Portuguese.
local onde tem baixo
We don't
astral,
think very much
aquela energia
about
toda,
this, but when we
como aqui,
go
se aqui
through a
nós encostarmos
place where
alguma
there's a
coisa
low
suja,
mood or
nosso corpo
low
físico fica
astral,
sujo, certo? No plano astral, se contatamos
it's
um
like
plano
when we
ou uma
touch
vibração
something that is
astral
dirty
pesada,
on the
nosso
physical
corpo
plane,
astral também
on
fica
the
impregnado
astral
com aquela
plane is the
vibração.
same. If we
E aí, quando nós
contact a heavy
adormecemos, o nosso corpo
vibration,
astral
our
pode
astral body is
traduzir
also impregnated with
contato
that
nosso com esse
vibration.
código como um
So
pesadelo, entende?
our
Uma
astral
situação de
body
violência
could
ou de
translate this
melancolia,
as a
o que
nightmare
seja.
when
Não, o
we
que for,
sleep, a situation of
pertence a
violence,
esse
of
ambiente
melancholy,
do plano astral
whatever.
inferior.
Anything that
Sim.
belongs to this environment of the inferior astral plane.
Para terminar, algo muito importante, deveríamos saber o seguinte:
To end, something
nada
very
que nós
important that we should
experimentamos
know is
deixa de ser
nothing
uma
that we
experiência de aprendizagem.
experience
Portanto, quando
stops
nós
being
ainda não
or
temos
ceases
algumas
to be
respostas na nossa vida,
learning
primeiro,
experience.
pode ser porque não chegou o
When we
momento.
don't have answers
pode
in
ser
our
porque não
lives,
estamos
first of all, it could
acessando
be
aquele
because
nível
the
onde a
moment has
solução
not
está
come
pronta.
yet, or it could be
Porque
because we are not
nada que nos
accessing that
acontece,
level where the
nada que
solution
estamos
is ready.
experimentando
Because
é
nothing
alheio à
that
nossa
happens to
experiência.
us,
Tudo que
nothing
nos
that we
passa,
experience,
seja o que for, é porque
is
nos diz
unknown
respeito,
to
senão
our
não
experience.
aconteceria.
Anything
Então, quando nós
or
conseguimos
is outside of our
criar uma
experience,
relação um pouco
everything
mais
that happens
saudável, mais
is
consciente
related
com a
to
vida
us.
onírica,
When we manage to
eventualmente,
create a
nós começamos a
healthier
contatar
relationship
o
with
nosso
dream
plano
life,
intuitivo,
eventually
que é um plano que está
we
dentro de
begin
nós.
to
E ali,
contact our
tudo aquilo que nós
intuitive
chamamos de uma
plane,
solução,
which is the
ou de
plane
uma
that is within
indicação,
us.
ou até
And
mesmo
then
de
everything
entendimento
that
de
we
uma
call
situação
a
que
solution
já
or
está pronta,
indication or
pode
even an
descer à nossa
understanding of a
consciência.
situation that
Agora, senão
is
nós não
ready
temos,
could
não,
descend to our
na vida onírica,
consciousness.
na vida de sonhos,
Now,
na vida
if
no
we don't
momento do
have
sono, um entendimento,
in
uma
the dream life,
compreensão,
in the
uma
sleep
valorização do
life,
que esse
the
momento
moment of
representa,
sleeping, an
em geral,
understanding,
vamos deitar logo depois de nos
giving a
alimentar,
value to
ouvimos a
that which
tecnologia
this
até o
moment
último
represents.
momento,
We go to bed
conflito para
right
nós,
after
faz parte
we
do dia a
eat,
dia já,
we use
e claro,
technology until
não
the
podemos
last
pretender
moment.
ter
Conflict is
sonho
part of our day
simbólico
by day.
ou ter sonho que
Of
realmente
course, we should
colabore
not
conscientemente com a nossa transformação.
have the intention of
Então, a
having
ideia
a
dessas
symbolic
reflexões, não, temos
dream
feito
or
vários,
that
fizemos
a
alguns
dream
na
that will
Espanha, também no
help
Porto,
consciously in our
em torno desse
transformation.
assunto do sonho,
We have
para dar
reflected
mais
very
valor
much about
à
this
nossa vida,
subject of
aquilo que já
dreams,
existe no
which
nosso
is
dia a
for
dia, muito
us
nosso de
to
criar uma vida
value
de sonho,
more our lives
consciente ou
of
inconscientemente,
dreams,
todos sonhamos,
something that already
alguns
exists.
mais,
We don't have
alguns
to
menos,
create
alguns
it.
registram
Consciously or
fragmentos do sonho,
unconsciously, all of us
alguns não
dream, some
registram
more,
nada.
some
Fato
less,
é
some
que no
register
momento do
fragments
sonho e
of dreams,
através do
some do
sonho, a
not
nossa vida
register
continua,
anything. The
a
fact
nossa
is that
transformação e
in the
aprendizado
moment of
continua,
sleeping
e é
and
um
during
momento
dreams,
no
our
qual nós
lives
deveríamos dar
continue,
mais
our
atenção.
transformation and
Muitos
learning
às vezes
experience
experimentam que
continue,
acordam
and
dia
it's a moment
e
that
se
we
veem
should give more
transformados em alguma
attention to.
coisa, ou
Many
sentem
people
bem diante de
experience
algo e não sabem explicar por quê.
situations in
E não
which
têm
they
consciência
wake
nenhuma
up and
de
they
ter tido
see
sonho,
something
de ter tido
transformed
alguma
or feel
experiência, não.
something,
Simplesmente
and
o
they
movimento
are not
onírico
aware at all that
promoveu
they had a
aquela
dream
ampliação
or
de
an
consciência,
experience.
ou aquela
No, the
experiência de
simple
equilíbrio, ou enfim,
dream
aquele momento de cura
movement
também.
promoted that expansion of
Bom, agora abro para
consciousness or
perguntas ou para
balance and
comentários e aí
healing
podemos
also.
interagir um
Okay,
pouco e
so now I'm
eventualmente
going to
colaborar com a
open to
necessidade de
questions or
vocês. A
comments
ideia é
and we
colaborar
can
com o que vocês
interact a
necessitam
little
também
bit and we
nesse
can eventually
tópico.
collaborate in your need. Also, the idea is to also collaborate in that which you need in this topic of dream.
A pergunta é se muitas pessoas sentem,
question
pressentem que
is,
sonharam, mas quando acordam,
Many
tudo se
people
dissolve. Não,
feel
então,
that they
como
have had
ajudar
a
nessa
dream, but
situação?
when they
Veja,
wake up,
primeiro
everything is
preparo para o
dissolved.
sono,
So, how to
e
help in
depois
this
o momento
situation? See,
complementar
first of
a
all,
esse,
we have to
o
prepare
momento
ourselves
e a
to
maneira como
dream,
acordamos.
to
Porque
sleep,
todos nós
and then the
sabemos, quando
complement
estamos
to this,
retornando
which is
para
the
o cérebro
way
físico,
the
nós
way
nos
in
damos
which we
conta,
wake up,
ou que
because all
estávamos
of us know
sonhando,
that when
ou
we
que
are
estamos
returned to
acordando.
the
Temos
physical
uma clara
brain
percepção
and
de que voltamos àquele ambiente,
we
começamos
realize
novamente
that
a
we
ter
were
consciência
really
de onde
sleeping
estamos.
or waking up,
Então, esses pequenos,
we begin to
breves
have
momentos, pode ser
awareness
segundos
of
ou
where we
minutos,
are.
não? Também
So these
deveriam
brief moments could be seconds or
receber
minutes,
atenção de nossa parte.
should
Pode
also
ser um momento onde,
receive
de
attention
maneira
from
menos
us,
abrupta,
which could
alguma
be a
eventual
moment in
experiência
which,
que
in a
tenhamos
less
tido durante a
abrupt
noite
way,
se registre
some
no cérebro
eventual
físico e
experience
possa
that
se
we may
tornar
have had
consciente,
during the
e
night
que não
may
fique tão no
registered in
inconsciente
the
ou no
physical brain and
subconsciente.
may
Então
become
depende de cada um.
conscious. and may not
da nossa relação com a vida
be
onírica,
so
porque não é
unconscious
só
or
uma questão da
subconscious. So
alimentação,
it
nem
depends
dos
on
conflitos
each
ou
one,
não, ou da
on our
tecnologia.
relationship
É do
with
quanto
the
nós damos valor a
dream
esse
life.
momento.
It's not only a matter of
Quanto damos valor
food,
a isso como
technology,
parte da
or
nossa vida.
how
Então, não existe um exercício ou uma técnica, é o quanto isso para
of
nós
the
é
conflicts we
importante,
have. It's
portanto,
the value that we
como
give to
podemos
this
incluir
also.
na
It's there is
nossa
no
atenção, no
technique,
nosso
so it's
amor,
how
na nossa
important
vida,
this it is
esse
for
momento
us.
da vida onírica e eventualmente tomar mais consciência.
How
Mas
we
pode ter
can
muitas origens, porque, de
include
novo,
in our
essa
attention,
experiência
our
onírica
love
de
to our
sonho é muito
life, this
individual.
moment of
Então, não tem uma resposta
dream
única
life, and
nem para um tipo
eventually
de
become
sonho, nem
more
para uma situação de
conscious.
consciência ou não dos sonhos para todos da mesma
But this
maneira. É muito
experience of
individual.
dreams is
Mas
very
dá mais
individual,
atenção
so there is
nesse
not
momento da
only
manhã, quando
one
estamos
answer
despertando,
for
também
one
pode
type
ajudar.
of
Mas cada um faz
dream
a sua experiência.
for all. It's very individual, but we should give more, but also give more attention to the moment when we wake up could help. But each one will go through their own experience. What else?
Sim. Ele pergunta se eu entendi bem a pergunta, que durante o sono, se está consciente do sonho, não é? E está interpretando ou
He's
vivendo o
asking if I
sonho
understood well the
conscientemente.
question. He's
Depende da
asking
situação. O ponto é o seguinte,
during the
a
sleep
nossa
if
consciência,
he's
dependendo do grau de
conscious of the
maturidade
dream,
dela, tá?
and if he is
A consciência não é
interpreting
mente, a
or
consciência é muito
living the
mais ampla
dream
do que a mente.
consciously.
Dependendo do grau de
Depends.
maturidade da
It
mente,
depends.
ela pode,
Depending on
durante
the
o
degree
sono,
of
ter
maturity of our
consciência de
consciousness,
que
the
ela está
consciousness is not
aprisionada
the
no plano
mind, it's
mental,
much broader than the
sonhando,
mind.
e
So
ela
depending
conduz
on the
aquele
degree of
sonho a
maturity of the
desfecho, por
mind,
exemplo.
during the sleep it could
Dependendo da
be
qualidade,
aware
do
that it is
nível da
imprisoned
consciência,
in the
aquilo
mental
pode ser
plane,
muito
dreaming,
construtivo.
and it
Por quê?
conducts
Porque é
the dream
exercício da
to a
consciência
closing. For example,
educar o corpo
depending on the
mental a
quality or
tomar
level
corretas
of the
decisões,
consciousness,
ok?
it could be very
Porém, no
constructive.
outro
Why?
sentido, por
Because
exemplo,
it's an
se
exercise
nesse
of the
momento o corpo
consciousness to
emocional não tão
educate
purificado
the mental body to
ingressa
make some decisions,
desejo que não
okay?
corresponde ao nível da
However, in a
consciência,
different
ele pode
sense,
direcionar o sonho
if at
para
this moment the
concretizar um desejo,
emotional body is
simplesmente.
not so
Aquilo não tem nenhum
purified
efeito
and it
simbólico,
enters
exatamente, ou
with
de
a dream that
crescimento,
does
senão
not
de
correspond to the
algo que eu
level
não
of the
realizei aqui,
consciousness,
como
it
desejo
could
no mundo
use the dream
físico,
to
eu
concretize a
realizo durante a
dream
noite,
simply.
porque
So it
ali
has no
a
symbolic
consciência mais plástica, não mais
effect
flexível, mais
precisely
maleável,
or
qual
growth.
seja o plano astral
But
ou o
something
plano
that I
mental,
don't
permitem
realize
essa
during the
criação,
day,
digamos
I
assim.
realize
Então
during the
depende
night,
muito do
because
nível da
then
consciência
the
e
more
do tipo de
plastic,
experiência que a
malleable
consciência quer viver. Então, de
consciousness
novo,
or
o
the
que dá
mental or the
norte para a
astral plane
qualidade
allow this
evolutiva de tudo
creation.
isso
So it
é a
depends
nossa
very much on the
intenção.
level of the
Se
consciousness
consideramos a vida
and
onírica
the type
como
of
um
experience
momento da
that the
nossa vida onde
consciousness
podemos
want to live.
aprender, nos
So what gives a
transformar,
direction to the
de
evolutive
resolver
quality of
situações
all of this
mais,
is our intention.
encontrar mais
If we
elementos
consider
para
dream life a
experimentarmos as
moment of our
situações,
lives in which
depende
we
pouco da
can
nossa intenção.
learn, transform
Mas pode
ourselves,
acontecer, sim.
find elements to transform experience situations. Yes.
Veja, como podemos proteger melhor, não, e evitar alguma situação do plano astral. Veja. Cada um de nós é como se fosse uma
See,
bateria.
how can we protect
Então, nós
ourselves
acumulamos uma
better
certa
and
energia que tem uma
avoid
certa
some
qualidade.
situations in the astral plane? See,
No mundo
each
que
one
nós
of
estamos,
us is like a
existem leis que
battery.
regem
So we
a vida, inclusive a
accumulate
vida
a
física.
certain energy that
Então, em
has a
geral,
certain
os semelhantes
quality.
se atraem.
In the world
Nos
where
atraímos
we are,
aquilo que é
there are laws
semelhante
that
ao nosso
rule
estado.
life, even the physical life. So generally,
Vamos chegar lá.
the
Vamos
energies
chegar
that
lá.
are
Esse momento do
similar
pensamento.
attract one another. So we attract that
Então,
which is
essa é
similar
outra
to
situação.
our
Você
state.
pode estar servindo durante a
We
noite.
get
Você
there.
fez uma outra pergunta.
Let
vou
me
responder
just
a primeira
conclude the
pergunta,
thought.
depois você faz a segunda, que é
This
outra
is some
resposta. Senão a
other
gente vai embolar dois
situation.
conteúdos.
You may be serving during the night, but
Então,
you
se
asked
durante
a
o dia
different
você
question. I'm going to
se
answer
deu
the
o
first
direito,
question,
consciente
and then
ou
you're going to have
subconscientemente,
a second
de
question,
manter uma
and then
vibração emocional,
another
uma certa
answer.
vibração,
Otherwise, we're going to
pode
mix the
acontecer
contents.
que à noite,
So if
mesmo
during the day you gave
inconscientemente,
yourself
você toma contato
consciously
com essa
or
vibração do plano
subconscious
astral.
to keep the emotional
Ou você
body in a certain vibration, it could happen that during the
Você
night,
fez uma pergunta,
even
tentando te ajudar.
unconsciously,
Se é lógico, precisava responder, então.
unconsciously, you are in
Posso
contact with
parar,
the
então, já responder?
vibration.
Pronto, mas para os outros é interessante a
You asked
pergunta. A gente
a
faz pergunta
question and
para que
I'm
a
trying to
audiência toda
help.
possa desfrutar. Pode ser? Pronto. Então, nós atraímos muitas coisas e atraímos aquilo que corresponde ao nosso estado
We
de
ask a
consciência.
question for
Então, como é que eu
everyone
vou
to
proteger de algo que
enjoy
eu
the
mesmo estou
answer,
gerando
to
durante o
make
dia?
use of the answer.
Se eu gero durante
So
o
we
dia
attract many
indignação,
things and
raiva,
we attract
conflito,
that which
estou falando do seu caso, estou falando em geral,
something
tá?
for our state
Durante a
that
noite,
corresponds to our
eu
state
posso
of
entrar em
consciousness.
contato com essa
If
vibração.
during the day
Eu
I
tenho que me
generate
proteger muito
indignation,
diretamente, porque eu mesmo estou
rage,
gerando aquela
conflict, I'm
situação.
not speaking of
Como eu
you,
me
I'm
protejo?
speaking
Tendo
generally,
sentimentos
okay?
elevados,
During
uma
the
boa
night, I
intenção,
could be in contact
pensamentos
with this
construtivos, e
vibration.
especialmente pensando na necessidade dos demais.
How do I protect myself?
Porque nós
Having
humanos estamos
elevated
condicionados a pensar
feelings,
só em
good
nós
intention,
mesmos,
constructive
não? Muito indiferente do que se
thoughts,
passa no
and
mundo.
especially thinking
Não só
about the
com
need of
outros seres
others,
humanos, mas também com
because we
nós chamamos de
human beings are
natureza,
conditioned
meio
to
ambiente, com
think
tudo isso.
only of ourselves.
Temos
We are very
muitas
indifferent
oportunidades de
to that
pensar
which
no
happens
bem
in the
maior,
world, not only
no bem
with
comum do que
other
só em
human
nós
beings,
mesmos.
but also with
Quando estamos
nature,
só pensando em nós
environment, all
mesmos,
of this. So
já
we have
estamos aí
many
com algumas
opportunities of thinking
grandes
of a
possibilidades de
higher
quando
good,
chegamos
a
no plano
common
astral
good,
durante a noite, ou
besides
melhor,
ourselves.
quando a
If we
nossa
are only
consciência
thinking of
atravessa o
ourselves,
plano astral,
we are there
está
with
nesse ambiente do
great
egoísmo,
possibilities that
de uma maneira ou
when
de
we
outra, num
reach the
grau ou no
astral
outro.
plane during the
Como nos
night,
proteger? De
or
novo,
when our
tendo sentimentos
consciousness
positivos,
crosses the astral
não
plane,
permitindo
it's
que a
in
sua
this
consciência
environment of
absorva e
selfishness.
processe,
How to
não,
protect
mesmo no
ourselves again,
subconsciente,
having positive
sentimentos ou
feelings,
situações negativas.
not allowing
Já
your
conhecem pessoas que
consciousness
você
to
encontra,
absorb
elas estão reclamando,
and
estão comentando um
process,
assunto, elas não estão
even
nem
in the
pensando naquilo.
subconscious,
É simplesmente
feelings
pegaram
or
uma coisa
negative
coletiva e estão ali
situations.
naquela efusão do movimento, da
You
relação
see,
comum,
people that
mas
you
não é
meet
dela
and they
aquilo,
are
não faz parte
complaining
delas aquilo. É parte do
and
movimento
commenting
coletivo.
on subjects and they don't even
Segunda
think
pergunta.
of this. You see that this does
Nós,
not
como
belong to
esponja,
them.
num certo
It's a part
sentido,
of a
nós temos
collective
uma
movement.
vocação para
Second
transmutar essas
question.
situações. Ou seja, nós temos uma vocação para transformar um
If
certo
we are
estado, uma
a
certa situação, para uma
sponge
outra
when we have a
qualidade. Nós
vocation
sim,
to
está
transmute
dentro da
this
nossa
situation.
lógica,
This
da
is to
nossa
say, we have a
economia,
vocation
absorver,
to
transmutar
transform
aquilo e soltar.
an energy.
O esponja não só absorve.
We have a
Imagina uma
vocation
esponja
to
que absorve.
transform
Não tem uma mão
a
que vai lá que faz
certain
assim que
state of
acontece. Se for
situation
absorvido,
into a
é
different
drenado,
quality.
certo? Imaginou? É uma esponja.
It's within our logic,
absorveu,
our
é
economy
lógico, de
to
novo.
absorb, transmute
Vamos lá.
that, and
Você aperta a
release
esponja
it.
e
A
aquilo que você
sponge does
absorveu,
not only
você libera.
absorb.
Entendeu? Agora, essa mão é a sua consciência.
Isn't there a hand that
Se nós
goes there and
absorvemos
presses it?
inadvertidamente ou
You
inconscientemente,
can
das
imagine
duas
there's a
uma.
sponge.
Ou nós não descobrimos ainda a nossa vocação para
You
ajudar
press the
os ambientes
sponge, and that
se
which
transmutem,
you
sejam
have
mais elevados,
absorbed, you
ou
liberate.
estamos novamente
So this
metidos
hand
em alguma
is
situação
your
que não deveríamos estar.
consciousness. If we
E no nosso
absorb
temperamento, às vezes, temos sim um temperamento de esponja. Absorvemos,
unconsciously
absorvemos,
something,
absorvemos e não
we
conseguimos
either
discernir.
didn't discover
Aqui tem uma
our
energia que é
vocation to
importante, pode
help,
ser de ajuda. Você
that
discernir
environments may be
o que é seu
transmuted,
e
be
o que
more
não é.
elevated, or
Porque
we are
não
again
somos
into some
seres
situation that we should
autônomos ou
not be.
automáticos, temos
And
discernimento.
sometimes we
Temos a
do have
capacidade de
a
discernir.
sponge temperament,
Então,
and
se
we
você trabalhar o
absorb,
discernimento
absorb, and absorb, and we don't manage to
eventualmente, a sua
discern.
consciência astral e mental
So
também vai começar
here
a
there is
selecionar
something that
pouco
could
mais o que
help
absorve ou
for
não,
you to
entende?
discern what is
sua
and what is
consciência
not, because we are
esponja,
not
se é que é o seu caso,
autonomous
você só
or
perguntou, não que é o
automatic
seu caso.
beings. We
Estou
have the
dizendo se
capacity
for o
of
seu caso.
discerning.
Ela
So
vai
if you
desenvolver
work
discernimento do que ela deve absorver ou não.
discernment
Tem pessoas que
consciously,
coletam
our
qualquer coisa,
mental
absorvem
and
o problema dos outros, começam a
astral
pensar em várias situações, quando elas
conscious
vêm, a esponja dela está totalmente
will begin to
colapsada,
absorb.
entende?
So if it's your case that your conscious is a sponge,
De novo,
it's
então
going
vou
to develop
repetir,
this
enfatizar o que eu disse
discernment
anteriormente.
of what is going
Absorvem
to
sem
absorb
querer
or
ou
not.
não
Some people
descobriram ainda
absorb
a maneira de
anything.
esvaziar-se
Others,
do que elas
other
absorveram,
people's
ok?
problems,
Ou estão absorvendo
anything, they think of
porque estão
anything, and when they see
desatentas.
their consciousness is
Por exemplo,
collapsed.
se o chão aqui tivesse sujo, eu estou caminhando,
So I'm going
se
to
eu estou
repeat
atento,
and
eu posso
emphasize what
desviar da
I
sujeira,
have
certo?
said.
Vejo
They
uma poça de água suja,
have
eu sou obrigado a
absorbed
pisar ali.
without
Concordo?
meaning
Posso
to,
desviar
or
dali.
they have not
No plano
managed to
astral, a mesma
empty
coisa.
themselves
Eu
of
posso
that which
sentir
they
algo
have absorbed,
coletivo,
or
eu
they
sou
are
obrigado a me envolver com
absorbing
aquilo, eu posso evitar aquele contato
because they are
daquela
not
vibração.
attentive.
Então, são
If
várias
the
maneiras, depende da
floor, for
situação.
example,
A
if
mesma
the
coisa do
floor is
exemplo que
dirty
ele
and
deu
I
ali.
see it,
Cada
I'm not
situação tem que ser
obliged to
analisada
step there. I can
individualmente.
deviate from
A
that,
reflexão aqui é
right?
bem
In the
geral
astral
para
plane, it's
poder
the
atender a
same.
tudo,
I
entende?
could feel something collective, and I'm not obliged to get involved with this. So there are
por
many
exemplo, antes de
ways,
adormecer,
depends on the
não, essa
situation. The
pessoa ou
same
essa
thing of
situação
the
perguntar
example
antes de
that he gave
adormecer
there. Each
se
situation
é
should
a
be
sua
individually
tarefa
analyzed.
absorver,
The reflection
ou se é a
here
sua
is very
tarefa
general to
transmutar.
be able to
E
assist
oferecer para a
everyone.
sua consciência profunda essa experiência. Porque essa mão é a mão da nossa
Asking
consciência,
before
entende? Não é nem a nossa
sleeping,
mente. É a nossa
asking
consciência que
before
percebe o momento de fazer
sleeping
assim com a
if it's
esponja.
your task to
Enquanto a
absorb,
nossa consciência não
or
percebe
if it's
isso,
your
nosso astral
task to
vai absorvendo,
transmute,
absorvendo,
and
absorvendo,
offer your
absorvendo. Um dia,
profound
nós
consciousness,
colapsamos.
offer this experience to your profound consciousness. Because
Sim,
this
é claro,
hand
aquilo que você
is
absorveu,
our
ou seja, a vida segue.
consciousness that realizes the moment of doing like this
Depende de
with
cada
the
situação.
sponge. Otherwise, our astral will absorb and absorb and absorb
Mas,
until one day we collapse.
sim.
Yes, recycle that which you have
boa
absorbed. Life
Sim.
continues. It depends on each situation.
Boa pergunta.
Anything
Ela
else?
pergunta se quando nós temos sonhos recorrentes, não? Sonhos se repetem, mesmo mudando a cena, o conteúdo essencial do sonho.
Very good question.
Pessoas sonham muito que não
She is
conseguem
asking
chegar
about
em casa.
recurrent dreams, dreams that
Estão na rua,
repeat,
estão
even
no bairro,
changing
próximo
the
de casa,
scene,
ficam
the
rodando,
essential
rodando, aquela
content of the
cidade
dream
se
repeats. Some
as ruas são
people
muito
dream very
maiores,
much that they do not
escurecem,
manage
não
to
conseguem
get
chegar em casa.
home. They are on the
Ou elas
street,
sempre estão
close to
tentando
the
encontrar
house,
alguém
but they
ou
be
se
going
perdem de
round
alguém.
and round,
São
and
sonhos
the
assim, veja bem.
city,
Nós
it gets dark and they
não
don't manage to
conhecemos
get home, or they are
pelo
just
contrário.
always trying to find someone.
Temos uma
Who
riqueza
get
interna
lost.
infinita,
Dreams
muito
like this.
grande,
So see,
muito ampla,
we don't know
e não nos
ourselves
conhecemos,
very
então o que
well.
acontece?
All the contrary,
Como dizia
we
antes,
have
tudo que nós
an
experimentamos é
infinite
para o nosso
internal
crescimento e nosso
riches,
aprendizado.
and we don't know
Quando
ourselves.
nós não assimilamos ou demoramos
So as
a
I was saying
assimilar
before,
algo,
everything we experience is for our
muitas vezes a
growth
nossa
and our
consciência profunda, essa
learning
mão que espreme a
experience.
esponja, é a
When we
mesma
do not
consciência,
assimilate or take too long
ele
to
pode
assimilate
determinar,
something,
ele pode usar
oftentimes
uma
our
mesma
profound
ferramenta de um sonho,
consciousness,
por exemplo,
this
para
hand
te dar
that
aquele impulso.
does like this with the
Qual tipo de
sponge,
impulso?
it
Ou o
could
impulso
use
é
the
mais
same
objetivo,
tool
ou o
of a
impulso não
dream,
se
for
envolver, não
example,
deve se
to
envolver.
give you that
Qualquer
impulse,
instrução
some
que
type
seja
of
por detrás
impulse.
de uma experiência de um sonho
Or
recorrente.
either the impulse of being more
Vamos saber,
objective or
você já deve
not
ter
being
consciência
involved
do
with
sonho,
something you
sim.
shouldn't be
É
involved.
anotar,
Everything that is behind the
é dado,
experience of a
inclusive,
recurrent
o
dream.
conteúdo mais
How to know
axial, essencial
you
dessa situação. E a
if you
cada
are
vez
aware of a dream like
observar
this, you
e se
take
perguntar.
note of it, put the date,
Nós não fazemos um
even
exercício tão simples, que é o seguinte: o que
the
você
more
quer fazer?
essential content of the situation, and
Muitas
observe
vezes
each
uma
time.
situação tão rica,
We don't do
ou
such
menos
a
rica,
simple
e não nos
exercise
perguntamos,
that
o que está
is,
querendo dizer para
what
mim?
does it mean for
É um
me?
momento na consciência.
Oftentimes it's such a
Posso
rich
estar no banco, posso estar
situation,
na praia, posso
and
estar
we don't
estudando.
ask ourselves,
Consciência
what
não é
does it
nem um
mean for
plano
me?
físico.
It's a moment of the
Momento da consciência
consciousness.
é o
I
que eu
could
tenho que
be
aprender com isso.
driving
Como
or
nós
in
não
the bank
exercitamos
or
esse
on the
movimento da
beach.
consciência,
The consciousness
nós
is not
muitas
the
vezes, não
mind or
só
the physical
fisicamente, mas
plane. The
também no
movement
sonho
of the
recorrente,
consciousness is what do I
necessitamos daquele
have
estímulo
to
várias
learn with
vezes,
this, as we
até
don't
que um dia,
exercise this
como
movement
a
of the
gente diz, quando cai a
consciousness.
ficha, aquilo encaixa
Oftentimes,
uma coisa e ali a gente
we need
compreende
that
ou termina um
stimulus
ciclo de aprender alguma coisa. Que
many
pode nem ser
times
consciente, percebe? Porque é uma coisa de um outro nível
so
dentro
that
da nossa
something may
própria consciência. Mas
fit
tudo
together
recomendo
and we may
seria
understand.
muito sábio,
It could be
muito
something
recomendável
that is
que
not
perguntássemos.
conscious,
Por que eu
because it
sonhei
could be a
novamente
different
isso?
level within
Eu tive
our own
experiência na minha vida
consciousness, and
também,
it would
já
be
sonhava
very
com uma certa situação.
wise and
Quando eu
recommended
comecei a
for us to
trabalhar
ask ourselves,
conscientemente essa
why am I
pergunta,
dreaming this
isso
again?
quer
I
dizer,
have had
desde que eu não tinha tido
this
uma
experience in my
resposta,
life also. For many
mas
years I
como
had
a
the
situação se
same
resolveu, no meu
dream.
caso, na minha
When I
experiência.
began to
Quando eu vi que eu tomava uma
consciously
decisão
work
de
with this
vida,
question,
eu
what
parei
does it
sonhando
mean?
aquilo.
Even not
E a pergunta
having
passou a ser, o que isso
a
que
conscious
minha decisão
response,
tem a
when I
ver
saw
com
that
deixar
I
de sonhar
made
aquilo?
a decision of life, I
Nossa vida,
stopped
nosso aprendizado.
having that dream.
Tem que
And
ser
the
pelo menos
question
calculista nesse
was,
sentido,
what does
que a
my
vida, o
decision
aprendizado, a evolução,
has to
o
do
amadurecimento,
with
o
stopping
amadurecimento da
to
consciência
dream about
vai
this?
muito além de uma situação física.
This is all part
Uma
of life,
relação com isso,
learning
que é o
experience.
exercício da pergunta,
Because
não
life,
tem a
maturing
resposta.
of
Veja bem,
consciousness
o
goes much beyond a
processo,
physical
muitas
situation.
vezes,
So the
é mais importante
relationship
que o
with this
resultado.
and the
Para
exercise
nossa
of
equipe
the
de trabalho, por
question
exemplo, eu sempre digo
and
assim,
not the
veja bem,
answer.
é mais importante
So you
o
see, the
processo de tomada de
process
decisão do que a
oftentimes is
decisão em si.
more important than
Porque senão
the
amadurece no
result. For our
processo em si,
work
a
team, I always
decisão,
say this.
acertada ou
So
não,
see,
ela pode ter sido até
the process
acaso,
of making a
por sorte deu
decision is
certo.
much more
Mas se eu
important than the
amadureço o
decision
processo em
itself,
si, eu
because
vou
if I don't
consolidando
mature
minhas
in the
bases.
process,
Então, a
the
relação
decision
com o
could be
intermitente é se
by
perguntar
chance for lucky, because I'm lucky, it worked out. But I don't consolidate the basis. So the relationship with the recurrent dream is to ask yourself and see.
Sim, em todas as palestras que eu tenho dado, essa pergunta sempre vem. Chama paralisia do sonho, paralisia do sono. Tá?
All the lectures that I have given, this question always comes. It calls the paralysis of dream. We are sleeping and we want to move and we don't manage to move. As I was saying at the beginning, we have an integrated personality that has a physical, etherical, physical, emotional, and a mental body. So between one body and another, we have the sub-levels that connect these bodies and give the integrity to these bodies. A being who experiences here that has an astral plane, and a being that processes thoughts and reflections. So we have many sub-levels. So when our astral plane is dissociated from our physical plane for some reason, that could have been a trauma, a subconscious record, something of the metabolism at some moment, a unique experience in many years. It depends on the situation. So generally it's a dissociation, disconnection between the astral and the physical planes. So we don't manage to reconnect the astral impulse on the physical plane and reactivate the whole neurological movement. So we have the sensation of paralysis. So this disconnection between the astral and the physical bodies.
Então, se você fazer uma reflexão bem profunda, se existe algo no seu plano emocional, no plano das emoções, dos sentimentos, que você consciente
for you to deeply reflect upon this, you should ask yourselves if there is something in your emotional plane that you consciously or less consciously is attached to or with difficulty to transform. Because being more stagnant, the astral plane avoiding to return to the physical body, it could be a resistance for the transformation on the emotional. But the sharing is just this lecture is just approach with some elements. So it could have many reasons. I'm reflecting with all here what could be useful within this context, within the group of elements that we have raised today.
Não, fica muito evidente.
So it's very evident.
Seu corpo emocional e mental, a energia da vontade. O dia que você tomou uma decisão, você.
So it's very evident that in your emotional body there was lacking the energy of will. When you made the decision, you resolved the situation. Do you realize?
Como?
Anything else?
Veja bem, tecnicamente, quando nós entramos no corpo físico, na gestação, temos 7 anos para construir o corpo físico. Tá?
See, technically, when we enter the physical body into gestation, we have 7 years to build the physical body. After 7 years, it begins the construction of the emotional body. Then the mental body from 14 to 21. So when he was building his physical body, he had this sensation of expansion, because it was almost an expansion of of that experience in the building, the construction of the physical body. Even though we don't see the building of the physical body of a children, it's in continuous expansion. So he became aware of this. The fear is just an interpretation, because when we are 5 years old, our emotional body is very much at the beginning of being formed. He was afraid, insecure. But the way you were reporting it, I don't see it as anything that is negative or interference in any plane. I just see it as a physical symbology or something that he perceived of the expansion of his physical body that is in the stage of growing. As I told you, a child doesn't have the emotional body totally consolidated. So if they feel protected in the environment where they live, any stimulus could represent fear. So it's something else, it's how they are emotionally. Does anyone have any question?
Com quê? Cada sonho, mesmo simbólico, ele é muito particular. Tá? E é muito delicado interpretar o sonho. Então vou te dar uma abordagem.
Each dream, even when they are symbolic, they are very particular, and it's very delicate to interpret dreams. So I'm going to give you an approach within I know of this and what I perceive inside of your comment. Numbers. Numbers also bring behind themselves a very high symbology. Some people dream with 3 numbers that are the same, or 4 numbers. So it depends on the moment of life where you are, the symbol, and try to see. Anyway, the number 8 symbolizes our contact with the expansion of limits. When there is a dream that gives you an impulse to expand something, it gives you the impulse with the number 8, because the number 8 is a symbol of the infinite, right? That indicates the continuity of the consciousness, which is a continuity of consciousness. We call it infinite. And the number 6 is symbolically connected to our relationship with the matrices, with the archetypes, with the ideals. So it could be a need of expanding your consciousness towards an ideal that you have or should be in contact with. Again, it's just a comment within. We are interacting here so that you can find within the meaning. We don't have the intention of giving answers, is just to help for. So again, shoes symbolize the way that we walk in our lives, or stage for our consciousness. Did you see a sandal or shoes that are worn? So the sandals represent that we have a certain detachment from material life, a simpler life, which doesn't mean of less quality, but this approach, in your case, it could be wear and tear, or worn out. This concept of austerity and detachment, because it seems like it's going to be worn out and eventually it's going to stop being useful for you. So it's an exercise. What is the adequate shoe? What are the adequate shoes for me at this moment? Each one interacting with their own dreams, taking note and asking themselves, what is the number 8 and the 6? 8 plus 6, 14. 14, 1 plus 4, 5. What is 5? So it's just for you to have a relationship with symbolic life, you see? You have opened, it was not The 6, the 8, the 14, the 1 plus 5 is just the interest for symbolic life. This is what opens the door.
Como eu dizia antes, veja, nós nessa etapa até os 7 anos estamos construindo o corpo físico e nosso corpo emocional está começando
As I was saying before, see, in the stage until we are 7 years old, we are building our physical body, and our emotional body is beginning to gather elements to build itself, constitute itself, and also add the values that it's going to develop in this life. If in this moment of construction, outside stimulus come, it could disturb very much. So it depends very much on what we call the permanent emotional atom. To enter this, it is the theme of the next lecture, which is the theme of the karma. It's something else. But for us not to leave it without a reflection, it could be a stimulus that is a greater burden than your emotional body can bear at that moment. So it's something similar to the difficulty of waking up. It could be that the astral and physical bodies are a little disconnected, so you lose consciousness. Again, it's just an element within a group of things. It's just the idea is just to stimulate our relationship with our dream life and our subtle bodies. Any other question?
Sim, ela pergunta se o fato de anotar os sonhos pode ajudar a resolver alguns problemas. Não sei se ajudar a resolver problema específico.
She's asking if the fact that we take note of dreams could help us to resolve some problems. I don't know if help to resolve a problem specifically. It's the same with the numbers. With the exercise of taking note, you begin to give space for your profound consciousness to use this moment to help you to mature, to help your consciousness to mature. It could also bring solutions, indications. People even resolve existential situations through dreams. And oftentimes they say, I just remember a fragment of the dream, but take note anyway, because the fragment, if this fragment was in the unconsciousness, all the rest is dirt that we absorbed and is useless. Or I just remember that I closed the door and the door fell. Oh, it's a symbol, take note. And the exercise, what is 86? What is the sun? What are the symbols? Just created this idea now. You just take note, and the exercise is going to connect you with dream life. And this is the process, how to live this dream life in a more useful ways. As it's 1/3 or 1/4 of our lives that we are sleeping. So it's not very intelligent not to consider this moment as a moment of life and learning experience.
A pergunta é como
The question is how to be more aware of dreams. There are these things that we can avoid, the way that we wake up, and mainly how we consider this moment to be a part of our lives. This is the most important of all. If I consider the dream life, the sleep time, as part of my life, when I am healing, when I can serve, when I can have answers, if I consider this, I prepare my bodies to organize themselves and eventually register the experience in a better way. There is no specific technique. Even why each one of us has a
Para
very
alguns, não fazem
different
nada para dormir, não se
subjective
preparam, ou menos de
experience.
dormir,
Some people do
olham
nothing
antes de
to go to
deitar,
sleep, don't
brigam
prepare
em casa antes
themselves,
de dormir.
look at the
Quem são os
email
superluzes? Como é
before,
que explica isso?
have an
Cada
argument
é
before
muito
sleeping,
indivíduo,
and have
sabe?
very
Tem
clear
que trabalhar,
dreams. How do you explain
evitando que
this?
possa
Each
interferir.
being is very
O
individual,
principal,
so you have to work
essencialmente,
avoiding that
é
which can
perguntar,
interfere,
realmente
and mainly and
eu
essentially
entendo, eu
ask
aceito
ourselves,
que durante a minha
do
vida
I
lúcida
really
também é
understand,
parte da minha vida,
accept
não é
that
algo
during
que
my
acontece à
dream
revelia.
that
Se eu
my
considero que
dream
sim,
life is also
essa
part of
atenção
my
e esse
life,
empenho,
if I
veja,
consider that
pegar um
it
caderno,
is
às vezes,
part
uma
of my
caneta
life,
do lado na cabeceira,
this
fica
attention,
disponível ali, entende?
leave a
Mesmo que você não
notebook
anote
and a
nada por 5
pen
anos, não tem problema.
beside your
Ter
bed.
interesse por aquele
It's
movimento
available there.
dá
Even
uma
if you don't take
mensagem para a
note
tua
for
mente,
5
teu
years,
corpo
your
emocional,
interest
que
in
você
that
sim
movement
considera importante
brings
o
a
momento da
movement
noite.
for your mind
Cedo
and
ou
your
tarde você vai
emotional
começar a ter
body that you do
consciência.
consider the moment of the night
E muitas vezes a
important.
consciência não
Sooner
vem
or
quando a gente
later, you are
desperta.
going to begin
Vem
to
quando
be
de
aware
manhã,
of
como
this.
sempre,
And
eu vou trabalhar,
oftentimes
eu
the
vou viajar, o que
consciousness does
seja.
not come
Você
when
está
we
no momento
wake up. You
inesperado,
wake
tomando
up in the
banho,
morning,
cozinhando,
you go to
ou
work
tomando
or
uma coisa no
traveling,
banco, e ali você fala,
whatever,
nossa,
and you're
essa noite
having a
eu
shower,
estava
cooking,
prestando
or
conta de um
paying a
cargo,
bill in
e
the
assim
bank,
vai.
and you say, "Oh,
Por quê?
I
Porque o nosso
dreamt
sonho, ou
that
esse
last
movimento
night
da
that I
vida
was
onírica,
closing the door
ele
of a
se
car."
imprime numa
Why?
região do
Because
cérebro
this
que não é de
dream
todo
or the
consciente,
moment
mas
of
está lá
dream life
impresso.
is imprinted
Quando
in
por
a
algum
region of
motivo
the
durante
brain
o
that's
dia
not completely
você cria uma
conscious, but it's
condição
there.
emocionalmente
So
favorável,
when
um
during
ambiente
the day you
favorável,
create a
naquele
condition,
momento
either
uma energia na tua
emotionally or
consciência
mentally
começa a ser
favorable,
registrada.
it
Para um
could
pouquinho
emerge into your consciousness
é um exercício.
at some moment. So stop for a moment and take note. It's an exercise.
Claro, depende do mecanismo de cada um, de novo. Aquelas pessoas
Of
que estão
course,
com um
it
temperamento
depends
mais
more in the
meditativo, mais
mechanism of each
tranquilo,
one. People
que
who
se
have
dão ao
more
tempo,
meditative
não
and
adiantar demais com algumas
calm
coisas, elas, no geral, pela manhã estão mais tranquilas
temperament,
para ter consciência
generally
de algo.
they are
E que
calmer
estão muito
during
ativos, ao
the
contrário.
morning to be
É o
aware of
processo
something. Those who
metabólico,
are
é a ação que
very
ativa a
active,
consciência,
it's
percebe?
the opposite.
Então, cada um é muito
It's the
diferente.
action that
O mais
activates the
importante é se eu
consciousness. So
valorizo ou
it's
não
very
isso,
different
se eu
in
dou
each one.
importância ou não a isso,
The most
se eu estou
important is
aberto ou
if
não a
I
isso,
value
e começar a
it
observar
or
todo
not,
dia.
if I'm
Acordei de
open
novo
or
sem
not
consciência,
to
não tem problema, mas eu
this.
sei que é
And
importante.
observe every day, oh, I have
Dia vai
no
começar a fazer
awareness
diferença
of this
nisso.
again. But no problem. I know it's important. Someday it's going to make a difference.
Não é que a gente conduz o próprio sonho. Pode acontecer, como eu comentei com ele,
It's not that
que a
we
nossa
lead our
consciência,
own
ele
dream.
está
It could happen,
consciente
as
dentro
I
do sonho.
mentioned to him,
Então, eu
that
estou
our
sonhando que eu
consciousness is
estou
aware during the
dentro do
sleep.
oceano, por
So
exemplo.
I'm
Eu estou
dreaming
consciente que eu
that
estou no oceano.
I am inside of the ocean, for example.
Se
I
eu
am
tenho um campo
aware that
emocional
I am
muito
in the
forte, eu
ocean.
posso ter o desejo de acordar, ou o
If
desejo
my
de
emotional
mergulhar,
body is very
ou o desejo
strong, I
de
may
ir
have
lá no
the
astral,
wish to
no
wake
oceano,
up
no
or
astral,
dive
e fazer
or
alguma experiência.
in the
Mas eu não
astral
tenho
plane to
poder
to
tão
make
grande
an
assim de conduzir o
experience.
sonho. Não é
But I
exatamente
don't
assim.
have such a
A
great
não ser que
power
tenha uma
of
consciência muito
conducting or leading the
avançada
dream.
e
It's
tenha
not
uma relação
precisely
com os
like that.
corpos sutis, ou seja, o corpo emocional,
Unless
o
I
corpo
have a
astral,
very advanced
muito
consciousness and I
alinhada
have
já
the
com onde eles estão acostumados, enquanto eu
relationship
estou
with my
desperto, a
subtle
seguir o
bodies
movimento da
that is very
consciência, ou seja,
aligned.
minha mente vai
And they
gerar
are used to follow the movement of the consciousness. This is to say, my mind is going to generate a movement of conflict. My consciousness does not allow it.
Pode ser que dia durante o sonho,
So it has an ascension over the mind and the
dar uma
negative
forma ao sonho,
feelings.
entende? Para que ele
It could be
siga
that
sendo-
during the sleep,
siga sendo construtivo.
my consciousness will give
Mas não
a
existe manipular o
shape to
sonho,
the
porque
dream
ali
so
nós
that it
estamos
may
fora do cérebro
continue to be
físico,
constructive.
ok?
But there is no way to
Não estamos
manipulate
falando
the
de
dream
magia,
because we are
a não ser
outside of the
porque não
physical
ligue, então
body.
não sei.
Otherwise, you would be speaking of magic,
Pois não,
which is
última
something I
pergunta,
don't
por favor,
deal
José,
with,
tá?
so I don't know how to answer. Last question because of the time, okay?
Veja, como se o sonho fosse muito verdadeiro, veja bem.
See, as
Verdadeiro não,
if
como se fosse
dreams were very
situação
true.
física. O plano astral, ele é muito
True, no,
parecido com o plano
not
físico.
true, as if they were
Só que ele é
physical.
plano
The astral
mais
plane is very
plástico,
similar
mais
to the
maleável,
physical
entende?
plane,
Ele é mais-
but
ele é
it's a
mais
more
maleável. A
plastic,
distância astral,
more malleable
ele é muito
plane.
próximo do plano físico.
The
Então,
astral
se você deseja muito uma coisa,
substance
o
is very
corpo emocional
close
pode
to
ter a
the
força
physical
de
plane.
criar uma condição
So
de
much so
concretizar
that
aquele
if
desejo,
we
porque ele é muito próximo do plano
desire something very
Muitas
much,
pessoas
the
não
astral
conseguem
body
concretizar
can
um
give you the
desejo
condition
no
to
plano físico,
concretize
só estão
that
concretizando
wish.
no sonho.
Many people who don't manage to concretize a desire, a wish on the physical plane, and they dream with this. So a situation like this could be an indication that the astral plane is very polarized in the physical.
Também uma pergunta que nas palestras acontece muito também. Sonho que
Yes,
está voando.
this is also a question that comes very much in the lectures. I dream that I'm
O nosso plano
flying.
mental, ele é plano muito
You see,
volátil,
our mental
fluido. A
plane
matéria mental ela
is
muito
very
leve, muito
volatile,
fluida. A nossa
fluid.
consciência, ela pode em algum momento estar no plano mental
So our
superior,
consciousness
experimentar
may be at the
espécie de
higher
liberdade no
mental
voar.
plane
Entende?
and experience
Uma
this
coisa que
sort
acontece
of
mais
freedom
no plano
in the
mental e o plano
flying.
astral. Agora, na
It's
medicina
something
chinesa
that happens
também, o
between
voar
the
tem a ver
astral
com
and the
só
mental
passa o
plane.
pâncreas, mas também seria uma
But in the
outra palestra,
Chinese
uma outra abordagem mais
medicine,
terapêutica, digamos assim.
flying also has to do with spleen pancreas, but it would be another lecture.
Depende da situação de cada
Another
um.
thing.
Uma resposta mais geral que sirva para
Again,
todos,
it
né?
depends on the situation of each one. I'm giving a more general answer that is useful for all. The experience of flying is
A tendência do astral é muito mais próxima do
an
físico,
experience that is
de algo mais
between the
mental que tem esse desprendimento maior.
the astral and the mental. The mental
Obrigado
has
por
a
terem
more
participado
is a more
dessas reflexões
volatile.
todas. Obrigado, boa noite.
Well, thank you for participating in all these reflections. So good evening, good night.